Welcome back to That Is Effin' Weird. I am Stevenson Longbottom. You read the title of the show, so you know why you're here. We have a guest on. Her name is Kelsey. She's been practicing psychic medium for the last 3 to 5 years. She's been working on getting her podcast going, and she does have a YouTube channel. So after this, you can check out the description and you can check out all the things that she has to say because I know you're going to love the show. Kelsey, thank you for coming onto the show and wanting to talk today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to getting into what's up and weird.
Well, first off, why don't you kind of tell us why you wanted to come onto the show and talk?
I'm always interested in having kind of outside of the box conversations. I conveyed this to you a little bit before private, but there are skeptics. Already just so much opportunity for conversation in the world of spirituality and what I experience. And
Hmm.
so I'm happy to kind of share that in all different fields. So I've done like holistic ones. I've done, podcasts that are just like all different areas. And so I'm really excited to get into just some like off topics. Yeah.
Well, again, yeah, thank you for coming on to the show, and we'll get right into it. You kind of had mentioned right off the bat, and that was actually one of the questions that I had sent you was the misconceptions, and people maybe having some doubts about what exactly that you do. So, how do you combat that? How do you kind of when someone says like I don't really know if I believe what you're saying, like how do you prove to them that what you're saying is true and authentic?
Yeah, so what it comes down to is personal experience, I believe, because I can explain to you the nitty-gritty of why spirituality works and why mediumship exists and how it exists, because it's primarily focused surrounding energy. At the end of the day, I am one of the, people that are more sensitive to certain levels and layers of energy. So when we pass away, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So it's like this part of you lives on. And I actually am going to dive a little bit deeper into this via my own social media and everything like that about how like quantum theorists are even finding that there's like a level of consciousness that lives on, right? There's shows that like photons in experiments, they know and they understand that they're being watched, like they're being observed, and that just because of one photon was parted ways with the greater whole, it
Hmm.
still has the entire knowledge and set of insight of the entire cosmos. You know what I mean? So it's like one is not the lesser of a whole. And just showing that there is some sort of awareness. And that is a huge piece. And so those are things that I'm kind of trying to like dig into more. So when it comes down to it, it's really like energy and consciousness. And I tune it to be a very specific like radio wave that you have to tune into. And just how some people have like other heightened senses, other people have heightened hearing, and there's super tasters in some ways. So you have these heightened senses. For me, being like audient, it's like you're able to just pick up on this vibration, this just like frequency, this radio wave that's just super specific. And it's about kind of like opening a conscious door. So that's really how I explain it. And when it comes to validation and when in the world of skeptics, I have had plenty of skeptics that have come and sat down with me. And again, they're usually at events because if you're booking private with me, a lot of the time people are like interested and they're already feeling like they're willing to book a session with you because there's a little less skepticism about it. But if you're doing something like a large event where someone booked a private party, or I do big events around the cities, and people kind of just were like, they like walk by your booth and they're like, okay, whatever, I'll bite, and then they
Hmm.
sit down, and the look on their faces, it says it all. They're like, holy shit, you're just talking about details of people that have passed, and in no time, it's not just like, oh, you're not just grabbing on to like, oh, you lost like a grandparent or something. It's starting, you can generalize from, you start to feel a sense of who it was, and then they start to draw a picture of the person's life, and not just the person who passed, the person who's in the seat. So you start talking details about the person who you're doing the reading for, and about like struggles that they're facing and things that they're going through, what they're in school for, you know what I mean? And they're like, what the fuck? So
Yeah.
that's really the validation kind of a lot of the time ends up being in the seat.
So more or less, it's one of these things where like well, let me ask you this first. So how do you tune, I guess, because you were kind of describing it as like a radio wave that you're kind of like tuning into. Like, is there anything that you do as far as like meditation, or do you just like you sit there and you focus and you're able to tune in that way? Or like how does that piece work?
Yeah, and especially when I was starting like meditation, I was meditating daily and I was trying to actually even meditate like 3 times a day and break up my day. And if I had a reading, I would try not to even use my phone and hop out of a space and really, because it comes from being pretty quite centered and neutral. And the more neutral and centered you feel, then the more you're able to experience, and not even just in spirituality, right? That's just like you're noticing more about yourself, about your inner workings, about your life, the more centered you are. So then it just starts to kind of unlock those doors for someone like myself as a medium. And so meditation has been a huge part. I am a huge proponent of it, and I still try to engage in it quite frequently. Now, I don't have to be as I don't know. I don't have to be as tenacious about it anymore because it's like you're working a muscle, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so when you're earlier on, I was experiencing these things, sure, and that's my business happened organically, but I wasn't as centered all the time, you know what I mean? And it's still hard to be centered now, right? I can't say I'm centered all the time, but it's just a lot easier switch to put on because it's like you're working out, you know what I mean? Think about like working out and then you're like, all right, now it's a lot easier for me to pick up this weights and it doesn't feel like it's such a as much of a reach. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense how you're describing it. So like after a while, after practicing it and everything, like you just kind of it's just something that you can almost do naturally then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're like, I can kind of turn it on when I need to. People ask, they're like, "Do you just like experience shit?" And I'm like, "Well, you try not to just stay in a space where you're experiencing shit like that,
Yeah,
you know?" And uh, I laugh because sometimes like being someone who's empathic as a medium, like who's an empath, and you can feel when things are going on. Like you feel, I can go into a whole description about different things that you sense as an empath as a medium, but it's like if someone in the room is struggling and they're like, wow, I'm surprised you didn't pick up on exactly what was going on. And you're like, wow, really, all I could feel was like you're screaming, like, you know, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
you're like, no, you're just like, okay, your energy is really loud. Don't feel like tuning into that. Yeah, but so it's funny, but yeah.
Well, I guess so. When did you first realize that you started to like have this? Because you said you've only been really practicing for the last 3 to 5 years. Now, was this something that like from a childhood that you just could sense something, or there was like little chunks throughout your whole life, or was this just something like all of the sudden, like after you said like meditating, 3 times a day, that you just started, to start to like find that radio wave and start to tune in? Like, what was that? What was that like?
When I was young, I would say I didn't understand that I was channeling. I think when I was writing and stuff like that, and when I was kind of expressing in more creative things, I now know I'm like, oh, okay, I understand what was happening, or being someone who's an empath and kind of feeling very loud things and not really understanding that exactly where it was coming from, or, I don't know all about that world. There's just like a
Yeah,
lot of, you don't really understand yourself.
yeah,
And then as I got older, I think that I became more level-headed, and then I had my own touch of, grief and loss. I would say more than touch. I've had my own experiences about it. And surrounding that, then the gifts are like kind of before and then after started to be really loud, but you start to second guess yourself and be like, okay, clearly I'm just going through something weird, and coping and grieving. And then I continued my life and put it down the best I could. And then sometimes I would be channeling when I was talking to people and I didn't know that I was. So I've had people, I was telling people about themselves and different experiences that they went through. And they're like, how do you know that? And you're like, I don't know. You know what I mean? And you don't understand where and that's actually a common thing that young mediums tend to talk about is they're like, I didn't really know my source. You don't really know where you're getting your information from. And then when I got a little bit older, I started to you feel like you have this gift. There's like a number of times in my life where like, okay, I feel like I have some gift, but I have no idea how, why, or what. And so it's a little confusing. And then when I got a little older and again just found my own way through heightened times in my life, found a
Mhm.
very centered self. And then I just started experiencing more and more, and it's stronger than I kind of ever had. And it's like I thought that I put that down. I thought that I was coping or I thought I was grieving. But when you're feeling centered and neutral and you're not feeling anxious and you're not feeling sad or angry and you're experiencing things, then you start to be like, oh, okay, I must have a brain tumor or this is actually happening. And then I
Yeah.
did talk to I talked to a psychologist and I was like, this is what I'm experiencing. And I don't know what to think of it. I don't know what to make of it. And I gave her, she was like, why don't you just give me a reading right now? And I was like, I don't really know how I could do that. You're still, again, you're finding the door, you don't understand the door.
Mhm.
And, anyways, I sat there and gave her a 2-hour reading and put together her family tree and how people passed, what they were doing, and like all different experiences. And then I described an object left by her great grandmother to her grandmother. And I'm like, your grandmother has it. And then she hung up by the end of the call. She's like, this is actually like, this is legit, Kelsey. Like, this is real. Go do this. You know what I mean? Go experience this, figure it out. And I was like, okay. And then she even called me 2 weeks later and she talked to her grandmother and she's like, everything you corrected me on was true. And she had exactly what you were describing. So it for me was the kind of the validation. That was the first person I really ever told that I was really experiencing these things. And I was a bit nervous to tell my family and friends, but actually they were quite supportive and a lot of them were unsurprised.
Well,
So that
that's
good.
really good I mean, that's really good that you got that support from your family and everything. I feel like that could be, maybe something that's kind of negative or something that, maybe like friends and family kind of brush off or they, might turn the other cheek and just be like, okay, yeah, I don't know. It's, it again, it could be something that's very unusual or very odd to people. So they might just may not believe you. So that's really cool that you got that support and you have that, those friends and everything like that that, you can have by your side. So that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and, especially if people are very I know we talked about this before, but people who are very religious, I was all in my family, I was wondering how they felt about it, but then they were explaining, they're like, "These things, like, are gifts from God too, and we talk
mhm.
about this in the church." So, you know what I mean? And people have being like prophets have been talked about, you know what I mean? So there's all just different facets of, spirituality that this exists in, right?
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned that like they when you got done talking with you said the psychiatrist, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
They said like, you need to go and take with it, take this and run with it. Where do you I guess go from there? Do you go because there's not like a store or anything like that that's like, psychic medium store, shop for everything that you need here or I feel like there's not like a school or, I feel like it's such a
Funny, there are actually. I didn't
oh,
go to any, but I do know people that have gone to them. I
interesting.
Yeah, and they wanna go there because 'cause they're interested in developing something.
Yeah.
I
Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
there's people that, don't have this ability, but they go there to try to get it?
yes, or they're not sure if they have it, they're maybe sense something and they wanna develop it, and so then there's, like, mentorship. So, personally, I went the route of I first told, like, my family and friends, and then I started doing readings to the best of my ability with them, and then business kind of happened organically. After I got a decent headway beneath it, I was connected to a medium that I knew from the area that I grew up, and I have family members that were friends with him, and so I talked to him as well because he's been in business for like a long time. and worked with him a little bit about certain things that I was feeling and I was experiencing. And the more you deep dive into it, it's like things start to kind of change and grow. So it was
Mhm.
nice to have that type of mentorship as things were developing for me. But would say on the back end, it really came from a lot of like doing some practice in it, understanding myself, and just really then I put a pause on it for a little bit just to take time to kind of center myself again and understand myself and understand what I can do and what I'm doing and kind of how I'm doing it.
If you don't mind me asking, how do you this is kind of like a two-part question. So like how do you distinguish between like messages and then like from your own thoughts and everything in your head and then like what are those what is that message or like how does that I guess sound? I mean I know it's probably hard to describe, but does it sound like a person standing like me and you talking, or does it is it just like a picture in your head? Like how does and then again like how do you distinguish like this is just something I'm thinking about to like no this is actually a real message that I'm receiving?
Oh yeah, no, I gotta be honest. That is like it's a harder call than it's a harder
Yeah.
call than I can even convey sometimes because I would say when you're still learning and when you're still growing into the space, it comes from your own internal dialogue, but it doesn't feel like you're making the thought, like you're making the sound. And it's like kind of tuning into a different layer of consciousness and a different way of thinking. And so you kind of like sit in a more grounded space and you can start to feel and sense something and you just like allow that frequency to like come in and set in and like send you formal words. And what's cool about it too is that if you hear something weird, like you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Or like kind of unique or smart, at first you want to just second guess that and doubt it. But then when you actually say it to the person sitting in the seat, it is the specific and detailed answer that they need, right? For confirmation and validation. So there's that hesitancy is like the self-doubt of it is a hurdle because 'cause you're like, what am I hearing?" You know what I mean? And I gotta trust what I'm getting. I gotta trust the insight. Then it can feel less like you're sitting across from me, but the audience, as you're more in tune with the space, it feels like someone's sitting really, really close set to your ear and talking, not whispering, but like talking like really quietly like this, like, and they're just like explain, you know what I mean? And so there's
Yeah.
just a softness to them and you're hearing it right next to your ear. And that's really the best transcript that I can get. If it's becomes can related by my own minds, like if I'm hearing my own internal kind of higher self, I guess, describe it, my own consciousness, then it can be a little less specific. I would say then you get, the best quality is when it sits right outside the ear. And then you can feel. Remember I was talking about being an empath. This,
Yeah.
uh this can go a few different ways. You can sense who they are. I have a friend. I have a friend. I'm gonna say this because it's kind of funny. And I'm like I've been given the okay. I have a good gay friend where I try to like, explain the energy. I'm like, you know how like feminine you feel, like flamboyant you feel, and I'm like, you can feel like your gay energy, right? And like, so imagine if you don't see the gay, my gay friend, right, and you feel like that flamboyancy. It's like the energy, the vibe. You know what I mean? You can sense that. Imagine if then walks in like a really strict old woman, like that sense. So without even hearing, you can just like sense older woman. You know what I mean? Grandma, without them having to say, "I'm the grandma." You feel like the energy that surrounds them. Then there's a really, really interesting and kind of cool way where they can kind of convey sensations of how they passed away. Now, people who do like energy work, they may be like Reiki masters, they might, you know, some they might be, I don't know, in just in society doing work and they don't realize they're picking up on other people's energy. It's like have someone who like had a head injury, you'll feel like a blast to your head or something like that. And it sounds terrifying, but it's actually because you're in such like a neutral space and they're so neutral. So when they're communicating it to you and you feel like, because it can help sometimes if you're mishearing them or like kind of misfeeling them, and then like I'll feel my breathing tighten up or something like that, or you feel like your heart, your chest starting to feel in pain. You're like, oh, they had a heart attack. You know what I mean? Because you could feel the sharp pain in your chest. So it's like
Yeah.
another way of translating.
Interesting. Now, like with you saying all of these things, is it like when you were first starting out, and was it, did you ever like, I guess, miss the mark, or were when you were reading to people, was it ever something where it was like you had that, not maybe was it kind of difficult to distinguish like what was like an actual like what you were hearing, and then what was actually like what was being said to you, and then like with that, did you get some like, maybe not like pushback, but was there that like skepticism, where it's just like you didn't really say what is correct and everything? So was it when you were first starting, did you see like, was there that issue at all, or no?
No, and it can happen. It can still happen. And I think if any medium were to sit there and you can be the most well, like known, you could be Tyler Henry and sit there and be like 100% of the time, your intuition, you know what you're hearing is perfect. They're lying. You know what I mean? It's not. Sometimes that's why it's really good to have multiple facets, and then where it can get a little muddled. It's like if I'm doing, say I'm doing an event, I'll notice that if I need to take a break, you don't really realize you need to take a break until you're like sitting down with somebody and you start like feeling a headache and the messages aren't clear, or maybe you're getting more in tune with something that someone else who like was just there, there it was like they're reading and it's kind of bleeding in there. But you're like, oh wait, okay, I need to take a break. I'm exhausted. You know what I mean? And when you kind of take a step back and take a break and then you come back, you're like, okay, now it's clear. I just needed to, just like anything else, you start to feel fatigued, you
Yeah.
know? So I
No,
think that can
that makes
happen.
sense.
Yeah.
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 There's two questions I have for you. You had mentioned Reiki master. What is that exactly?
Yeah. So actually, I am a Reiki master's. Now it's its own tradition of energy work, and I got my cert because I wanted to be able to take it more out into the community. Now, it is a Japanese practice where there's like hand placements on certain on specific parts of your body, and it aligns with the chakras. Now, when I was engaging in mediumship, one of the things that blew my mind was I started to experience the frequent like experience and see different energy points in people. And that's something that I realized when I was younger I did experience. That's when you're like, oh, did you have things when you were younger? And you're like, yes, I did. And that was a huge one. Was like like seeing, feeling, and sensing energy points in people. And then when I was like kind of just deep diving into mediumship, all of a sudden, when I was doing just kind of my own, I don't know, work on my own time, I started experiencing like the chakras, and all of a sudden knowing a lot about them. And I never knew, I didn't even really think that they were real. I actually didn't know anything about them. But then all of a sudden I hopped into this space and I'm like, oh, okay, like I seem to be like a master of this topic and don't really understand it. You know what I mean? And it kind of
Yeah.
blew my mind. And for me, it was super validating because, and then I talked to another, that medium that I was kind of like mentoring with for a bit. I was like, the chakras are real. He's like, oh yeah, oh no, let's talk chakras. And in that sense, it is just, they are points of energy, right? They're like, so it, for that way it kind of becomes a little bit more tangible, and I'll explain it in a way that like it's like your third eye, like your vision, and then your dreams, right? Your kind of creative consciousness, like the black third eye. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, something that seems so woo woo become really tangible. So anyway, so Reiki is, it's like the healing art of these energy forms, and it's passed down in Japanese tradition. And so I ended up getting my Reiki starts more recently, because I wanted to be able to take it a little bit more into the community. So and be able to, like, work at, like, the hospitals if I wanted to, like, my grandmother, I remember when she was, my mom would said to me more recently, she's like, "Grandma, when she was in hospice and she had cancer, she used to love Reiki." I didn't know that when I was younger. I, did know that she was psychic, but I didn't know she liked Reiki. And so it's like you're able to kind of do more in the community, and it's actually becoming more and more like people are it's backed by science. You know what I mean? So I thought it was a good thing to get my certifications and integrate mediumship with it and integrate my own world and my own spice with it.
I guess so that's something that like how do you become like how do you get certified in it? Is it something that you just have to study for a while and then like because I mean like you think about like taking a driver's test, you know, you study, you take a written test, you go do it, and then yep, you got your driver's license. Is it the same kind of concept or is it just something where you know you have to spend a certain number of years practicing and then you can get it? Like how does that work?
So the certs aren't a big deal to get. I would say if you want to practice it, you have to be your own best. Like you're gonna have to kind of cooperate with it. So the certs can take like a day. It's like it takes a day to get these certain levels of, these certain levels, one and then two and then three. And you work with different Reiki masters and see their style, and you get introduced a certain set of insight through them. But I think it depends on who you are. If you're not really in tuned with it, or if you're still new to it, then you're gonna get maybe Reiki 1 and 2 and not actually still feel comfortable taking a client. So you have to,
Okay.
you know what I mean? Like, you can get your certification and be like, "I'm actually nowhere able or ready to take on clients."
Yeah.
I
Okay.
still need, but so there's an attunement period that tends to be 21 days after each certification that you wanna kinda practice on yourself or practice on people. But I, still think that there's different different energies at play, and I think some people are a little bit more in tune with these energy points than others. So you can it's like, how you give out 2 driver's license and they could be 2 very different drivers, you know?
Yes. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
You had mentioned, a name, and I have no idea who it is. Tyler Henry. Who exactly is that?
Oh, he's got a Netflix show, what a doll. He's a Hollywood medium,
Mhm.
and he's got a Netflix show actually, so he does his own mediumship reading. So that's the style of mediumship that I do, because a lot of people hear psychic medium or psychic, and then because psychic and medium are really like two, they're not, you can be psychic and not be medium. And then people do tarot. I don't do tarot. I know people who are really great and with tarot and understand all the cards and what they're pulling, and but it's when you're doing mediumship, it's more of a conversation, and you're like sitting with a one person or more or a group, and you're just having more of a relaying the conversation. So I believe, and I've heard other mediums say this too, to really classify yourself as like, I'm a medium, you're hearing. You're getting audience words, right? You're getting, like, translation, you're able to translate, you're not it's not so much of a psychic intuition. And so I think that I have had a lot of clients come to me and say, "I thought I've seen a psychic medium before," or, "I thought I've seen a medium before, but I realized after I came to you that I didn't never saw a medium before," you know?
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I had something that I was gonna say. I totally forgot about it. But no, that was one of the questions that I had sent you was like, what is the difference between being a psychic and being a medium? So I guess for you, do you classify yourself as one or the other or both?
I'm a medium. I can do some like psychic insight, but I'm a medium really. So I really sit in that bucket, I would say mainly. So people they're like, "Oh, I think sometimes people coming to me and they're like, "Well, what about psychic intuitive readings, and I'm like, well, I'm channeling, you know what I mean? Like you're why I'm gonna not gonna stop the stream to talk to you about astrology. I don't like, I sometimes I have friends who love astrology, and I have a lot of friends who like love astrology, and they're like, oh, Mercury and like Jupiter, and then they're saying these things, and I'm like, oh, and sometimes they're like, oh, they're a Virgo, and I'm like, I don't know like what that means. And I think some people just like love to talk about that, but I'm like, I just have a different I have a different insight, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
All right, so you had mentioned, now let me ask you this. Um I spoke to a Viking witch last week, and she
cool.
had said that she had worked with tarot cards, and I had told her a story about, um, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. I was at the Goodwill in town, and I saw a deck of tarot cards, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." So
Oh, tarot,
yeah,
I know.
tarot card. Yeah, I ended up buying them, and I did a little bit of research, and it was like you need to put them in the moonlight to cleanse them and all of this. And I've like read stories where it's like it's really bad to take another person's cards. All right, let me ask you this. Did I screw up by taking the cards from Goodwill? Did I put some bad juju on myself or anything like that? Or do you just like, no, it's whatever, or do you not really have any opinion on it?
I think the power of intention is misunderstood. I do think like there it's funny, I was just talking to my friend recently who's kind of into this type of stuff too. And we're laughing like intuitively, it just reminds me of, like, when you move apartments, wanting to leave things like, I wanna get a new broom, I wanna get a new, like, toilet brush, like, you know what I mean? Like, I wanna leave, like, a new rug and just leave,
Yep.
like, the dirt and, like, the grime from another
Yep.
place and start fresh. With that
Yes.
being said, do I think you messed up? No, but do I think there's value and respect for picking up someone else's piece. And I do think like I my mom has told me that she's had bad experiences when she was younger with a Ouija board.
Mm,
Now, and so she doesn't like them in her house. She never liked
yep.
them in her house. And if you're someone who knew my mom's not like a woo-woo type lady, you know what I mean? And so but she's like, I've seen stuff with those boards, and she says she never liked them in the house. Now, my grandma also you wouldn't have known her, seen her, and been like, oh, you're a woo lady, but she definitely, she, the gift runs in the family a bit, and she would pick up a board, no problem. Now, I'm not afraid of the boards at all because I'm like, okay, well, it's just a step between. But there's something to do for me with the respect and kind of clearing out the energy that surrounds it. Like you're not going to pick up a card and it's not going to interact with you as a negative like demon, you know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
think you kind of like put into practice that say like, hey, like respect what you've seen, respect what you've gone through,
Yep.
energetically, and let's like kind of create a new fashion from it. Is that's where I think that people kind of misread and misguide. So I don't like to say like, I'm not a big I don't know. A lot of things don't make me like jump in terms of like energy, but
Yeah.
I've seen some people like, like try to like throw a board. I'm like, do not do that. Don't do that. You gotta
Well, like
respect.
I will say I haven't I counted the cards because I don't know the exact number. I think it's like 72, 74, or something like that. But I counted the cards to make sure that they were all there. I haven't like tried to use them because again, like I do respect, it's almost like what you're saying. Like I don't know how to use them, so I'm not going, it's like a power tool, or it's like driving a semi truck. Like I know how to drive, but I don't know how to drive that, so I'm not gonna touch it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like I'm just trying to make sure that I didn't bring anything into my house. Now again, nothing weird has happened, or I have, nothing unusual. But it was just it's interesting to see what other people say. Now, almost the same instance, the woman I was talking to last week, she kind of said the same thing. She's like, I don't think you did anything bad. She's like, just know that she's like, it's a tool that you can use to talk to like the other realm and everything like that. So it was like, oh, okay. So it's not necessarily
Yeah.
bad. It's just a tool in the sense. So knowing that, it's like, all right, that's kind of cool. So I just wanted your take on that.
I I feel like when I've to sit down with something that you're interacting, you have like set up with an intention of like grace and gratitude, say thanks, and like whether people really realize it or not, like you have your own guides. You maybe don't see them or understand them or have any idea how to hear them, but just be like in the sense of say Reiki or like energy, just hey, like asking for some light here, clear out the stack. And I think that not to disrespect any channel or pathway of work, but I do think a lot of practice in tarot and there's a lot of things that can come from like a dark energy that people are like interested in like channeling into a dark channel to move into a place where they're able to communicate with the other side and you don't need to do that and I think that's where kind of people get like messed up with some messages where like it doesn't need to be dark, right? If we can go back to like say the sign of like light and lighter, brighter things and people who are like talk about like God and gods and you know what I mean? Like more like higher beings that stand in light and just being like, all right, I'm gonna like use this in a different light, you
Mhm.
know? I personally think that that comes with a clear and um, a better attunement, to be honest.
Okay. Okay. I do have a question for you. You had mentioned this, I think, twice now, and I did write it down because I'm really interested in it. You said that your grandma might have had this ability and it was like passed down. Do you remember her, talking about it, doing stuff, or was it just kind of like hush hush, or did what was that like?
She didn't practice it, but I do remember the Ouija board. My cousin had got a Ouija board at our house, and then my grandma barely put her hands on it, the thing was flying around. But my mom would say more that, like, her experiences with my grandmother, that my grandma was definitely psychic. And then I have some, cousins. I have, an aunt and uncle that they're very, very religious. They are very, in depth in Christianity, and they essentially talk about sensing some of the, like the more healing modalities, but in their world, in their terms, God is the one true healer,
Mm,
and they feel like they can kind of connect intuitively and aid some of that modality, if that makes sense. So I think that I've seen it on both sides of the family, and then not just my grandma. I have my mom's like cousin too. Recently, my aunt was like, do you know, like she was, she's psychic, and it's funny. I was talking to her, and and she was like, I am in a retirement now, and I decided I wanted to start to explore this. And then she said too, she's like, but I started to like realize that you have to be really centered all the time. So now I'm taking some time off of doing readings for anyone and just trying to center myself. And I was like, bingo, I did the same thing. I used to tell my mom, would be like, don't call me. I'm not doing readings for anybody for just a little while. And so you can kind of just find your way through it and to navigate it because then part of it too is like, you're doing readings for people and it's very sensitive information and that's why I try to be really sensitive to I never want people to feel like I'm selling them on any of my services. I think sometimes apparently I like underdo it because I have clients being like, "Why don't you offer your medium services to me anymore?" And I'm like, "It's not anything personal. I think it's like you're working with people who have grief and trauma and you're talking to the people of past and there's really sensitive topics. So I then you there's definitely a consideration that you have to go through on a Tuesday multiple sessions of people that are they're talking about, you know, you're talking about people who have taken their own lives, you're talking to people who are victims of abuse and like, you know what I mean, all this stuff. And then you have to just put it down and you got to go into another session where it's like round 2. And so there's this whole kind of protective energy around it where like you need to learn that you're there as a viewer, as a listener. You have to respond to it. You have to respect it. Thank you for coming to you. And then you got to put it down because it doesn't belong to you. you know? And then you gotta
That
keep going.
that has got to be, like, very mentally and probably even physically draining to have to do that, to, like, because you're almost like, because I was about to say, like, people aren't going to you on their best day and everything. Like, they're going to you with, like, grief and concern, and they have a lot of weight on their shoulder. And to a certain degree, you're kind of like helping them lift some of that weight. So, and you have to do that multiple times. It can't be something that's easy.
Yeah, but, I would say a lot of the way that the readings come out, which is a good process. And this is how it came out for me naturally. And it's funny because I've talked to people who have gone to psychic schools or like teach psychic workshops, and they're like, well, how do you do it? And like, this is how it became, or it comes organically to me, but they're like, this is how it they also echo that they're like, "Yeah, this is an important way to teach it," but it's like you get into the nit and gritty, like really some like you kind of introduce the players, right? You think about it like a game board. You introduce the player parts, you introduce the backstories, you go in deep, then not just the backstory of the player piece that entered the chat, right? Like say the past loved one, then you start to enter the player pieces that you're doing the reading for and their backstories and their turmoil. And but then there's this kind of like light that gets brought through it, and there could be like a sense of comedy, right? And we laugh about it. And I then there's just like so then we leave and there's a sigh of relief. So like it's like you laugh, you cry, and then it kind of shifts to showing them like it's okay to let this go. You know what I mean? Like it's time to let it go, sweetheart. And I think that's where probably my personality kind of comes through in the readings too, because I get it from them. But I think it's a really important understanding that when you're going through this, you're going through this with a stranger, right? Like I'm a stranger to these people, and I'm being told all of their deepest, darkest like things, right? And
Hmm.
just trying to convey to them and make them feel safe and make them know that like you're not alone, okay? Like these things happen and there's a way out, and it's okay to put them down, and it's okay to keep moving. And so
Yeah.
show some respect through that. So
For you then, like, how do you prepare yourself, like, mentally or spiritually before, like, a reading? Like, because you said, like, you go to these conferences or these huge readings with, like, a bunch of people. That can't be easy. So, like, is there anything, do you, like, prep a couple of days beforehand, just kind of centering yourself? Do you try to, like, tune everything out and not try to do readings so, like, when you're there, it's more clear? Or, like, how does that work?
I would say I try to keep my if I'm for in terms of like doing sessions. So if I had a big event, say like on a Saturday that was taking up all day, I would probably be like, I'm not going to take any clients or do any like work after say noon. You know what I mean? And clear my energy for like the afternoon into the evening, have an early night so that I know it's going to be like a long day of, spiritual gymnastics. So,
Yeah.
so it's a lot of energy. But so
Yeah.
it's like it'd probably be in line with like you're running a triathlon, like, are you gonna go, like, go out the night before? Probably not, you know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
gonna just chill out. And I do a lot of I do and I teach yoga and, like, Pilates, so I'll do, like, classes and stuff, but I'll try to be mindful about, like, what type of, like, and, what kind of style I'm doing. Am I gonna go, like, take my, hot Pilates class, or I'm gonna go get my ass kicked? No, or am I gonna, like, maybe just go for, like, a yin class and just chill out? That sounds great, you know?
Okay.
And I really have been trying I'm, like, a little off the wagon again. I really try not to drink caffeine. I am so much it's so much clearer and, like, less of, like, I don't know, a buzz. I'm so much clearer when I don't drink any caffeine, but obviously, like, I still try to keep up with life. So, I you know, I can't drink anymore because I have immune system problems that have bad reaction to alcohol, but I'm sure if I did drink still, I would have an
Mhm.
opinion about, alcohol and
Yeah,
doing it,
yeah.
and
I was
how it
gonna
is
say
yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know how do you do it without, caffeine? Because I have a cup of coffee right here next to me. I feel like I'm always sipping on coffee.
That's why I'm off the wagon. I'm off the wagon, like I said. So it's it is I do, you know how I was telling you how it goes from like an internal dial, like my own kind of voice, my own higher self translating the messages to like a feeling like it's right outside my ear. I notice when I drink less, like when I'm not drinking caffeine so much, I hear it right outside the ear. And so
Okay.
like you're in more of a center of a space. You're not like cracked out on lattes, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Alright, I guess, my next question is, do you have any sort of things that you do to protect your energy or well-being during a reading? Like, is there kinda almost like the same thing with, like, prepping beforehand? You said you kinda like you rest. Is there, I guess, any sort of so let me tell you this. There was a gentleman that I met with, a couple weeks ago who, does a lot of chanting and does a lot of spiritual stuff in that way to, like, kinda center himself, give him, like, the energy that he needs. Do you do the same thing, or is there something on the lines that you do to kinda protect yourself when you're getting your reading?
It's so funny because you're gonna talk to different people and they're gonna give you different opinions on this, and I'm just gonna tell you. When I
Alright.
started, I when I was, like, in meditation, I kept seeing, like, my higher self or these guides as, like, angels. So I always felt protective, like, I never felt that I needed to ask for another layer of protection because I always felt safe. And now, if there was anything that was kind of muddled that felt negative, I might try to like maybe put that down and be like, whatever you are barking at me, get out of here, and just kind of invite something a little bit more positive. And I think that's pretty powerful in my own stance. So I've I try to I would try to like meditate before reading. I feel like I get a little bit more clarity, but now I feel like I've been really busy, and so it's not always easy to just like, let me meditate for like 20 minutes before a session, 30 minutes before a session. I don't really always have the time.
Yeah.
And so you do kind of like just turn it on, but I have to be honest, like I think that the player piece that I have that allows me to do this senses so much like kind of neutrality and compassion and spirit that I can kind of be having a stressful day, or you can maybe be going through things in your life that you feel sad or mad or whatever it is. And then you do a session and you're like, oh God, it felt like its own wave of like clarity and positivity, and it almost grounds you. It almost feels like it's a better place to be in. So those have been my own experiences. Now, I think that I always kind of like sit in a place of gratitude. So I think it can change as you're growing as a medium. But if, you know, and I think that as I'm doing the sessions, I feel the safety net that I need. Does that make sense? I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, that's really cool. No, that's really interesting that you like. I guess you have that, or you can sense that. Because I mean, it must be comforting in some sort of way, to know that you kind of have that.
Yeah, it is. And it's interesting because the more than I like, you know, I again, I had the guy that I mentored, but I now I've made more connections in this world, but like you don't meet as many people that are mediums, right? You're not floating around and being like, oh, like you're a medium, and I don't know, and it's just so it's interesting to hear the theories. And I had talked to one, you know, woman who is a working as a psychic medium, and she had come from classes, and hearing what people are being taught and what I don't know, I don't always agree with what I hear. And I think that sometimes you hear people, I don't know, saying things that misconceptions and ways to kind of control the group. I don't know how else to
Hmm.
explain that. So,
Uh, yeah, no, that makes sense. That's always disappointing when you hear stuff like that. So
yeah, someone said something interesting to me. Like they were like, "Oh, you can't pre-link. Like you can't pre-link that energy might not come back." And I'm like, what are you talking about?" And she said that this person had taken a class by someone who is apparently like famous and works
mhm.
in Europe. And I'm like, I don't really know who that is, but he sounds like a jackass to me. He's telling people that, like, they're not allowed to, like, and I'm like, "Well, what the hell am I supposed to do? They're not allowed to pre-link." Like, "What do you mean?" Like, and then she's saying, I'm like, "What is pre-link?" And she's like, "Well, when you connect with that person's, like, spirit before the session." And I'm like, "That's never fucking happened to me in my entire life." And I'm like, "What am I supposed to do?" Sometimes you're, like, sleeping the night before, and then they come to you and, like, sometimes I dream about, like, I'll have a window in my dream where I'm pretty lucid, and, like, you'll have the person's loved one come through to your dream before the reading, or they're booking the session via email and you can just feel the person's loved one. And I'm like, what do you mean? I like pre-link. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know, they're just walking through the door, dude, you know?
Yeah.
And
It
I
seems like
just
it's something like you can't just really it's something that you can't control.
thank you. Yeah, it's just like as soon as you're just sitting in a space, it's just there. And I'm like, I think that there are people that try to force certain opinions and keep people in a line, and you know what I mean? But I think there's a way of working around that. I think there's guidances, and I think there's really like good things to guide people on. But then I think that if you're trying to make a lot of money off of a group by teaching them, I think maybe there's certain people, just like any other career, where they sit in a position of power and they try to just make everything a little cookie cutter and keep everyone all in a line. But I think the
Yeah.
most empowering part of something like this is that everyone's going to do it differently. Everyone's going to feel it differently. And that's the beauty of it, because we all have different minds. We have all different feelings. We all experience something a little differently. And if we do not allow that to be conveyed in any right, this is like in anything we do, right? It's like making a cookie cutter scientist or a cookie cutter doctor. Like if you don't allow like the way someone has like different insight or able to kind of come into something with a different experience, you're really shutting off more than like a greater ability to learn, you know?
That's kind of interesting to hear that there's kind of like different styles and ways to go about like receiving a message and like even giving a message, because I think I mean in my mind's eye it's because again I don't know much about this world at all. It from the outside looking in it's almost like it's just one thing and it's all there's no difference in it. But the more I'm talking to different people about like their different belief systems and like spirituality, I'm finding that it seems like in almost every aspect of whatever, people practice, believe, or whatever, there's a lot of different like sub branches and different ways that people practice different things. And that's really cool. But then it's just like, it's almost overwhelming that there's all of this different stuff, but it is kind of cool. And I think it's one of those things where it's like, if you didn't have success with like getting a reading from somebody, maybe it's just that their style or technique. I could be wrong. Do you feel like that might be the thing where it's like just
Oh
because you didn't
yeah.
have Okay, okay,
Oh
cool.
yeah, I think that because you can have in like you can have like 5 people who are like, holy shit, I love you, and then you can just like energetically not line up with the sixth person. And then
Okay.
you're like,
Yeah, no, I mean it
I'm
makes
sorry,
sense.
I don't know if we're like a good match. I've had people call me to even, well, this is maybe a little bit different, but I've had people call me to inquire, and I'm talking to them and I'm like, I don't think you're ready for a reading, and I don't think that you're going to be receptive, and I think that I don't know if I'm gonna be a good fit for you because you're gonna need to work with me. Like you're gonna have to like sit with me and like, I don't know. And I think that people they were I was thinking about one person in particular. They were just pissed at psychic mediums in general. So I didn't even like or mediums in general and maybe had a bad experience. So I got like a 30-minute phone call of getting yelled at for literally nothing I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're just and I'm like, yo, listen, I don't think that I want to do this because
That makes sense.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, come back to me if you're more open or if like, you're in a different wave in your life. And but you do I have had people, I think that we just are energetically in line and that's okay, you know?
Yeah.
And you're never and that goes again for anybody else. Like this goes on for like anything. Like I said, I do yoga and Pilates teaching. Like you can have like you can teach 20 people that are like, oh my God, this is the best class that I have ever taken. I love everything you have to say. And then you can maybe have the other half class, or like, have 10 people be like, you're insane. And I never want to talk to you again. Like, don't ever put me
Yeah.
through that. Don't talk to my family. You know what I mean? You're just never
Yeah.
going to be everyone's person. And I think that can just like go into energy, like, too, you know?
And there was a it's funny that you say that. I wasn't sure if I should mention this or not. I don't know if we had time, but we have a little bit more time. I'll say it. So, you're not the first medium that I've talked to. When I first started this podcast 3 years ago, probably I'd say the first 6 months to a year into it, we had sat down with a medium, and at the time, I had, I think, two other co-hosts on the show with me, and then the medium, and then it was myself. So there was four of us. And before the show, I had talked to her, and she's like, I don't want to do any readings or anything like that. I'm like, no, that's totally fine. You don't have to. Kind of almost the same thing that we're doing right now. But towards the end of the conversation, she's like, because we had one of the co-hosts, he was a huge skeptic, and she's like, I'm sensing some sort of energy within, and he was not being like rude or anything like that, but she was like, I have this energy, or I'm sensing something. She's like, would you guys like a reading? And we're like, sure, why not? It's totally
Hmm.
fine. And she was away for like, I think, like 5-10 minutes. I can't really remember, but she ended up doing a reading to all three of us. And I kid you not, she was spot on with
Yeah.
everything that she had said about each one of us. And the one co-host who was a huge skeptic, after the show got done and everything, he messaged me personally and was like, everything that she had said was like, there was things in his life and everything like that, and it was just, she was spot on. So it was uh, it was a really cool experience. I could not explain it because, again, she was saying things that I had not told her. This was the first time we had been chatting. So I would say for that piece, do you feel like I don't know, it's almost weird because I feel like even if someone is a skeptic, you could still read them and prove, I guess not prove, but you could still like show them that, like, hey, what I am saying is true. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, I will say that.
Yeah, yeah, I've had, like that's what it can happen when you're in settings that, again, that you're not, like, you don't have, like, clients booking, and those are the best, like, like, not the I don't know if best is the best term, but, like,
Hmm.
you have more skeptics because they're just kind of, like, passing by. For instance, I set up a booth at a fair in Boston, and the first people who just, like, wandered by were 3 young college guys, and they're like, "Could you we do psychic reading?" And I'm like, "Sure," and I was giggling because 'cause I'm like, I just unexpected, and I'm going down the line, and I go, 1, 2, 3. I'm like, "I'll give you guys 5 minutes each, whatever." I'm going down the line, the first one, and we start to dig into, again, what was he doing for work, or and then some of the struggles with his girlfriends, and then I knew he was like, "Oh, they were having problems too." He gave
uh,
me the look, he was like, "No, no, no," and then I go to the second one, and we started to dig in, and, like, so you're talking about, like, real shit, and then I go to the third guy, and he goes, "I'm out. I'm good. No, thank you," and I'm gonna take that as a compliment. I appreciate you. I respect it. Here's my card if you ever want to talk. But I'm like, you can tell, and right when I shift to them, because I I kind of describe it as like experiencing a symphony. Like,
Mhm.
and it's like, so because of the spirituality and the messages, they're so fluid. So sometimes, like, if I'm not sitting in a correct space and that you're a little too open, you can be like, shit, I'm hearing 3 sentences at the same time from the same person, so you're getting 3 stories. You're like, "Oh my god, grandpa's telling me how he died, what he did for work, and what this person needs to do for their job, all at the same time," and I'm feeling all of them, and that's my job as a medium to, like, try to slow down the funnel. And you're like, "Whoa," and
Yeah.
be fast, you're like, "Okay, wait, wait, hold on, sorry, I'm going a little quick," and, but then you have, just there's just, like, kinda different ways to go about it, so you can kinda turn and you start to, like, feel the entire symphony of this person's aura and this person's life, and I can tell the kid had a lot of stuff going on, and
Ah,
I'm like, "I get it," he's didn't
yep.
wanna go there, but yeah, I mean, I've had, skeptics at other events too. They're like, "Wow, you start off really general, like this person that passed in my life, and then you got really specific, and then you talked about like what we used to do together and like the music we used to listen to and like specific bands and stuff." And they're like, "I was a skeptic," and you're scaring the shit out of me. Like, it's
I
okay.
will say it can be very, like, overwhelming, and it is one of those where you really wonder, like, how is this person identifying such accurate information, and how are they able to, like, pick this out? So it can be kind of scary and overwhelming if you're not expecting it, especially like with those college kids that they thought, okay, yeah, whatever, this we'll see how this works. And then it's like, oh no, this is legit. So it's pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
And I
So
think the more important tune about it is what are you doing with it? And I think that's a really better word of advice because I have people that have come to me from other mediums that are not necessarily like not legit, but they're not really like using it for anything good and they can kind of to like scare people, I don't know, or like try to manipulate certain things. And I that's where I get pissed. I like had half a mind to call someone, in the middle of the state that I had a client come from, and I was pissed at them. And I'm looking at their ratings, and they have great ratings, and they scared the shit out of this really young grieving person. And
mm,
I was pretty pissed at them. I mean, I had half a mind to call them, and I was like, don't do it, don't do it.
yeah.
But I just think like I had my father, while he's super supportive, I don't think he ever like really fully understood and saw what you can do for people and like what I was doing for people. Because he had his own experience of the media when he was a little younger, and he's like, it was weird, this lady's in my house, she knows all this like stuff about us, she knows all this stuff about me, and like, who are
mm,
you? And
yeah.
I'm like, I don't think you understand that as someone who's kind of empathic and help and nurturing, I'm trying to bring people to a better part of themselves, to a better part of their grief and this process, and show them through certain doors. And I think that's a huge important thing for me and in my ambition in this. And so I said to him, I'm like, for instance, I had a guy who, he lost his wife, and then I did a reading for him, and he carried a lot of burden about how he passed, but he couldn't do anything. It was just the way it was. And she was funny. The wife was funny. The wife was like she's such a vibrant person and was also like a loudmouth, and was like, what the hell were you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, yelling at him. And but he sent me an email the next day and was like, I slept for the first time in a year.
Mm.
And so I think that is a really important position for anyone who's doing this stuff. And what are you doing with it? And how are you going to be in tune with it? And then like if the circumstance comes up where you're hearing something that's really heavy, being able to work with the guidance to frame it in a way that you're not going to scare like you're going to show a person a better door than when the one that they came in from. I
I
think
think
that's
that's no, I was gonna say I think that's really good. I think that's you framed that very well. So no, I appreciate that. I think that's a great way to look at it, and I think that's what a lot of people should follow too. So that's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And that's really if that's why I do this. This is why I came here. And when I started to see what I was able to do for people, I was like, oh, okay, I got to take this more seriously. And I have not done anything better in my life. I really haven't. So
Well, that's awesome. Well, Kelsey, I think that is all the time that we have for today. I really do appreciate you coming on the show and explaining all of this stuff. I learned a lot more. I'm sure our audience members did too. Before we officially sign off, I mean, you gave a great outro, I think, right there, but is there any last minute things that you want to say to our audience members, anyone out there that might be curious about this, may have questions, anything like that?
oh, hell yeah. Always ask questions. Always want more. Always, always, always be open to more opportunities because literally, if you shut yourself off to like any possibilities, you're shrinking your ability to learn. You're shrinking your ability to like unlock other doors for yourself. So ask more questions, be more open. You know what I mean? Experience more because you never know what you've got going on.
I need to take that. I need to run with that with just my normal day of work and everything like that. I'm gonna take that. So thank you,
So
Kelsey,
yeah,
so
take
much.
risks. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, be the asshole that fucks things up, you know what I mean? Like, literally, like, take more chances because, like, That's the best advice that I could, even career advice I can give. Is like, if you just stay scared, you stay nervous, and you don't take shots, you don't take the chances, you're just gonna stay in the same momentum for a long time. And what we want to do is we want more, we have
That's
advantageous people.
That's great. That's really good. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna apply that tomorrow at work. So, and you as the audience members, if you loved what you heard, Kelsey, she has her YouTube channel. We'll get that. We'll put it in the description. And then she does, like she said at the beginning, where she's working on a podcast. So as soon as we get word of that, we'll put it in the social media so you can go check that out if you heard what you liked and everything. So just remember the old saying that we have here: we don't want stuff that's normal. We want stuff that's effing weird.
Frequency is clear.